I'm just now seeing this for the first time, so I figured might as well just record it. So, game balance, Manifesto, in Path of Exile, Ultimatum. Alongside every new league, we aim to make balance changes to a wide variety of character systems to improve, build, and playstyle diversity. This league, we focused on rebalancing a few specific game mechanics related to new blood-themed skills and Vol skills, while lowering the power of specific mechanics that were dominating the metagame and were too far above the level of power we aim for. We also made changes to the Atlas passive trees after reviewing their balance, and as a result of both Ritual becoming a core mechanic alongside the upcoming League reward changes. We haven't included the changes to League rewards described in our announcement here. Okay. It's more like gym stuff and maybe passive tree information. Alright, let's see. Balance changes related to new low life costing skills. Low life, low mana, and low energy shield now all count as being on 50% or below. So it makes it much easier to get to low life. And opening up low life that is not fixated around using shafts, which is cool. Because you can actually play low life with enough chaos resistance. Not too bad. This new threshold is both a bit more obvious at a glance and is large enough a value that a player could survive for a long time on low life with the help of new Petrified Blood skill. As a result, certain skills, passives, and items have been rebalanced to compensate. For example, the Punishment Curses effect that causes enemies to take more damage while in low life has been reduced in power, as it now takes effect for a larger portion of the monster's life. Fair enough. We've made similar changes to the Assassin's Ambush and Assassinate passive, Infernal Mantle, and Replica Last Resort. Okay. The Blood Magic Support gym has been split into two gyms, as the lack of a damage multiplier made it a poor choice for primary skills. Now each of these new supports is balanced for the appropriate use case. Okay, we saw that in the unveil. There are a small number of new passive clusters on the passive skill tree for generic physical damage. That's good. Having just tried to make a bleed kinetic bolt build, there's not much scaling for it, so it's kind of needed. So as well as physical damage over time multiplier to better support new skills. Certain sources of bleeding damage and damage over time multiplier for bleeding have been changed to physical damage over time to let them apply to Corrupted Blood and the new Reap and Exsanguinate skills. It's a cool word. Those include the Gladiator's Gratuitous Violence passive and the Ascendant's Gladiator Notable. Not all bleed-related passives and modifiers on items have been changed, so a full bleed-invested build and a build using both bleeding and corrupted blood won't always look the same. Okay. Corrupted blood now never counts as bleeding damage. So reductions to bleeding damage taken no longer affect it. The Staunching Flask modifier and the Pathfinder's Master Surgeon Notable now state that they both apply to bleeding and corrupted blood. So yeah, reading this first line, I was just like, okay, yeah, okay, at least that's still there. Corrupted Blood's damage has been rebalanced so it is more consistent between sources. So specific monsters that had high Corrupted Blood damage will no longer be as strong, while others that dealt almost no damage will be dealing a more noticeable amount. So I guess the Corrupted Blood damage is more based on the number of stacks now rather than like the damage that the monster would deal, which isn't a terrible change. Okay, Bladestorm now has a multiplier to bleeding damage while in Blood Stance. That's cool. Similar to the multiplier on Lacerate, to enable bleeding builds on the blood-themed skill. That's cool. I like this change. I feel like Bladestorm really could have used that. The Elder-influenced weapon modifiers that grant a chance for poisons or bleeds inflicted with this weapon to deal 100% more damage have been removed. In their place, Elder-influenced weapons can now roll a new local poison or bleed damage over time multiplier modifier. The double damage chance modifiers were too multiplicatively powerful for these builds, providing power that only the modifier granted, so they've been changed to an effect that is additive with other bleed/poison damage multipliers. Man, I really hope that doesn't just like neuter every bleed build, because like bleed builds I just don't see as being strong without that double damage, so I really hope that the scaling is there. Because oof. Yikes. Let's keep going, maybe there's more. The way skills specify costs has been refactored. Skills now specify what resource they use. Consequently, stats can specify whether they affect all costs/reservations or some combination. For example, the Righteous Decree notable on the Templar now reduces mana costs of skills, while the Tireless notable affects all skill costs. Okay. So what that's looking like here is this notable here is going to be reduced mana cost of skills, and Tireless down here is going to be reduced cost of skills. So if you're using a life based skill cost, taking these nodes will be worth it, which adds more utility to these nodes, which I kind of like. Yep. Okay. Some existing passive skills and items have been updated to affect all costs or reservations, but many effects are now resource specific where appropriate, like the inspiration support. Okay. So that's going to be on mana used still rather than on life. I don't think you'll be able to get life used to get the inspiration buffs. These changes also open up new possibilities for alternate costs. For example, the Chainbreaker Keystone no longer removes rage on hit, instead adding a small rage cost to all skills, which would then be affected by skill cost modifiers. This has allowed us to keep Chainbreaker functional with spells while still losing rage when used alongside skills that don't hit like damage over time spells. Okay, so that's gonna, should open up the functionality of Chainbreaker. They didn't say whether it's still... So you could affect the rage cost of skills, but does the mana regen still apply to the rage regen? Because if so, then I think Chainbreaker is going to be much stronger as a result of this. As a major benefit of these changes, reservation skills no longer have an associated cost by default. So you don't need the current mana available to reserve a skill. Even when your mana is completely depleted, you can still enable an aura, making it much easier to swap out auras or turn one on again if you accidentally disabled it. That is very, very cool. Because of this, Mind skills now have both a mana cost and mana reservation. This means that both modifiers to costs and reservation both affect the appropriate parts of Mind costs. So Indigon no longer provides spell damage without affecting Mind costs at all. I didn't know that. I didn't know Indigon provided the damage without affecting Mind costs. Interesting. So they both have a mana cost and a mana reservation. It does not say that they can only be used... Like, I'm still curious about the idea of Reap Mines. Reap Mines. I think it could be a thing. Okay, let's see here. We've made a series of changes to Atlas passives for a variety of reasons. Certain modifiers provided more rewards than the average rewards granted by Atlas passives, so have had their chance or rewards lowered. Some are obvious, like high-value targets or diplomatic escort, while others more subtle, like Seance, which effectively added so much item quantity to areas that it was subtly boosting core drops like maps more than single Atlas mechanic should. I think that's the I think Seance is this. Yeah, you get so much item quantity out of that for real. High value targets. And then not that. Where is that? Is it this? Yeah, diplomatic escort. High value targets was very good. Diplomatic escort is very good. And I never even touched this because martyr ghosts are a thing and I hate that. So, okay, that's fine. Continuing, certain modifiers provided fewer rewards than the standard reward increase per point, so have had their chance or rewards increased. For example, the rewards from the Invasion Exotic Goods total have been improved. Yes, I tried this out. And yes, it was pretty lackluster. You get the invasion boss, but the stuff they dropped, no. Certain effects have been made more sense grouped together, like incursion passive saying all monsters and incursions are at least magic, has been moved off the Glendish Cairns onto the existing time dilation modifier on Lexajoris. So Lexajoris is now completely focused on having more rewarding individual incursion runs, and Glendish Cairns focuses on creating the best possible temple. Ritual has been added to Haywork Hamlet, with two notables available. It replaces Beyond There, Power Hungry no longer exists, and the Per Demon notable has been moved to Glendish Cairns at a slightly lowered value, as the pun was too good not to keep. Yeah, it's the first time I noticed the pun. Okay. So they explicitly mentioned Invasion Exotic Goods. I hope they buff this because it is so rare. It is so rare to get a fully revealed blueprint, and it's so cool. Like I ran so many maps in this zone, and it just they don't. It's I think it's too rare. Hopefully they buff that. So Haywork Hamlet is losing Beyond stuff, gaining Ritual stuff. Hopefully it's not the only zone that's getting Ritual stuff. And then, yeah, this Corrupted Strongbox was good, but I'm curious, like, the Rogue Exile stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I think the June stuff is really good. So now you're gonna be able, yeah, you're gonna get more stuff up here. I don't know if anything can be done to fix the Parandus. And like hopefully this got better, because somebody I saw did research on this and it's just like so bad. Because like you can see here, like I have increased, like Parandus chests have increased chance to be catalogs, increased chance to be treasures, increased quantity found in Parandus chests, and increased quantity found in Parandus chests, all max rolled. And this was the biggest waste of time. So hopefully that's part of the updates. They did mention something about Brandis in the unveil, but yeah. Okay. Vol skills. We've made a balanced pass on damaging Vol skills, making them a more interesting choice relative to the Vol skills that provide ongoing buffs. We want damaging Vol skills in particular to have more reasons to be used by a larger variety of builds. The uptime for Vol skills has been improved via various means. Soul generation on unique monsters has been increased to 6 souls per 2% life loss with a 1-second cooldown. This is twice as many souls as before. I don't know that this had ever been quantified, so it's nice to have that knowledge there. And the 1-second cooldown, notable. Damaging Vol skills have had their soul gain prevention times lowered relative to the duration of the Vol skill. For Vol skills that don't have duration or ongoing effect, the soul gain prevention time is usually just 1 second. Reduce the Vol soul cost and or the number of uses on Vol skills that had relatively lower impact per use compared to other Vol skills. A balance pass has been made on all damaging Vol skills. Note in cases these have been buffs, except for Vol Righteous Fire, which now provides less damage to spells while active and now sacrifices a larger amount of your total energy shield and life. We felt it was too easy for any spellcaster to use this skill to get significantly more spell damage for a long duration with very little downside. Note the fire damage over time aspect of the skill has been increased, keeping this as an attractive option for builds focusing on burning damage. We have introduced several new unique items and made adjustments to existing ones to either give higher uptime of Vol skills at some cost or allow you to utilize Vol skills more easily on builds that struggle to fit them in. Okay, what I'm thinking about from this, like initially hearing about Vol skills in the unveil, I was thinking, okay, Vol burning arrow, it's going to be nuts. Reading through this, I'm thinking Vol Cold Snap. It's already so good when paired with Cold Snap and Vortex if you're using them both to do damage. And if you have that Vol Cold Snap, you just have that extra layer of damage. Yeah. Vol skill's probably going to be a lot of fun. And I'm not too upset about this Vol Righteous Fire. It was just a extra more multiplier that was free for a gem socket, so I'm okay with that. Okay. We've made balanced passes on a large variety of skills that are performing above acceptable power levels, either through damage, speed of clearing content, or defensive benefits. Those include Blade Vortex, Blade Blast, Toxic Rain, General's Cry with channeled skills. I'd heard something briefly about that. Seismic Cry, needed nerfed. Carrion Golem, and Vitality. Vitality is pretty broken. I will just throw that out there. Frostbomb and Wave of Conviction have had their exposure values lowered as these skills provided too large an elemental resistance reduction compared to other mechanics of higher investment or penalties against bosses. Meh. Okay. Flesh and Stone now has a 35% mana reservation from 25. The defensive power of the skill in Sand Stance and the offensive power in Blood Stance was too high relative to other reservation effects. I kind of agree. This is very strong. You've added a small reduction to Stance skill reservation cost on the Blood and Sand specialization cluster near the duelist to bring costs down slightly for appropriate builds. So those nodes are these ones right here. League is ending in 3 minutes, so if I need anything else out of here, I need to get it. Okay, Vigilance Strike and its Threshold Jewel. The Vigil have changed how they handle fortified duration and the durations granted, so that the Vigil doesn't result in a very long duration fortify effect, instead granting a shorter fortified duration than a high level Vigilance Strike. Vigilance Strike's base fortified duration now scales with gem level rather than through an increased fortified duration stat. Previously, players could gain 30 seconds of fortify from 2 sockets and a single jewel, which is far too cheap for the defensive power offered. Okay. Divergent Berserk alternate quality now grants the Berserk buff 0.25% more spell damage per quality from 1%. The effect was providing too much damage to spellcasters when paired with effects that increase gem quality, such as the Enhance support. Okay, well, this changes my build in no way. That's good. General balance changes. It's all nerfs. Quivers as caster offhands. Critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier, damage over time multiplier, and chain modifiers on quivers now only apply to attacks or bow skills. The Signal Fire and Rigwald's Quills unique quivers have also had their physical damage and his fire and projectiles fork modifiers changed to be with attacks only. Okay. Bows with a quiver could outclass mini caster weapons for a variety of builds because of the extra 6 link. So this change brings total offensive power to a more reasonable balance without removing the option entirely, and also makes a lot more thematic sense. Very true. Physical explosion body armors. Influence and synthesis modifiers that cause enemies killed to explode dealing physical damage will no longer have a 100% chance to apply. The replacement modifiers grant enemies you kill have a chance to explode, dealing 1/10 of their life as physical damage, with a new lower tier influence mod being introduced that has a lower chance. That's cool, makes it a little bit more accessible. Probably still impossible to roll due to the waiting, but we'll see. This keeps the mechanic and opens up the possibility of stacking explode chance with high investment, but will no longer reliably wipe out packs of monsters through a chain reaction of explosions. I bet Occultist still works to do just that, and it appears that Ritual League has now ended. Get login screen music for the rest of this. Harvest monster life. The base life of all harvest monsters has been reduced by 30 to 50%, but harvest machinery gives monsters around 100% extra increased life on average. Tension is no difficulty change in harvest fights, but harvest monsters created with the Desecrate skill have life values more in line with other desecratable monsters in the game. Hey! This is to address corpse explosion builds getting a significant damage boost from having specters of specific harvest monsters. The strategy will still work, but the difference in monsters used won't be so significant. That's fine. Modifiers that allow your hexes to affect hex-proof enemies such as Cosby's Will, unique body armor, no longer allow your hexes to affect yourself, while hex-proof as you are not your own enemy. Interesting. That's not a nerf. That's a buff. That's a buff. Unless it's being used for Tim Chain's Headhunter stacking. Anyways, I would prefer, if I was hexproof, not to be cursed. They still haven't added life to this chest, so it's still kind of in a meh place, in my opinion. Poison Sextant. The Sextant this was bad. The Sextant modifier, which granted players increased damage and movement speed for each poison on them, has been removed. Savvy players could run every map with the Sextant effect applied, usually through fracturing specific maps and the Harvest map enchantment that didn't consume Sextant uses. with certain items that allowed them to apply large numbers of poison buffs to themselves. They could achieve extreme damage and movement speed with little investment. Note to partially compensate, as we believe self-poison is an interesting playstyle, we have added a new unique item that retains the damage and movement speed per poison stats. However, these stats will now be capped at a specific value. Fair enough. Fractured fossils and beast splitting. Splitting an item through beast crafting now applies a split tag to both items, similar to mirrored. Items that have fractured fossils used on them will also gain the split tag. Split items cannot be split/mirrored again and cannot have imprints made of them or applied to them. A big nerf to fractured fossils. Cannot have imprints. Okay. Split items cannot be split mirrored again and cannot have imprints made of them or applied to them. So you cannot create an imprint, then split it, then revert it back through an imprint. This alone is going to increase the value of fusings this league. The beast splitting, crafting, fusings will not tank in value as quickly. Fractured fossils. Hopefully they make fractured fossils more accessible, because less than 1% of players in the game, significantly less than 1% of players, have found a fractured fossil ever. Probably say the same thing about all, and that's more accessible than fractured fossils. So, yeah. I don't like the depth, fractured fossils. I feel like you should be able to get them a little easier. So them having less use, especially applied on maps. Anyways, Atlas mission sustained. We removed the bonus mission chance from the Awakening objective bonuses, as Atlas passives combined with this bonus and other mechanics were resulting in almost endless supply of missions. We've decided to keep the Atlas passives at full strength and remove the Awakening objective bonus, so the player has a choice to invest more in Atlas missions if they desire. Okay, so what I'm taking from this is just getting your Watchstones will not increase your chance of getting missions, only if you get your overall passive thing that gives you the cool double Shaper Guardian fights and stuff. You can only get increased Atlas missions through there, is what I'm getting from this. I read it correctly. Delirium item quantity and rarity. We've lowered and standardized the amount of item quantity and rarity granted by Delirium Fog, so they now give up to double the inbuilt item rarity of monsters and 50% item quality of monsters. This now caps out at maximum depth rather than at 50% depth, as was the previous case. Huh? Maybe this is supposed to say maximum depth. This now caps out at maximum rather at 50% depth. This was the previous case. I feel like there's something wrong here. I don't think this is correct. This seems like something to do with Delve. This is talking, the above part is talking about Delirium. Okay, interesting. Passive tree changes. Last set. Yeah, and this I don't know. We are wary about how accessible normally scarce stats such as area of effect, skill effect duration, aura effect, and projectile speed are on cluster jewel notables. Okay. Given you can stack multiple of the same notable on the passive tree, as a result we have made small numerical nerfs to several cluster jewel notables that grant the above stats. Okay. As a relatively minor ascendancy change, Pain Reaver has been replaced with a new passive skill on the Berserker, providing defensive benefits once you lose life from an enemy on hit. It is designed as a high-risk defensive recovery mechanic, granting the faster leech rate from Pain Reaver more easily, but with an associated risk. Okay. The effects of the Berserker's flawless savagery notable are no longer limited to attacks, and the small passives apply 10% increased physical damage instead of the old 12% increased physical damage with attacks. So you can play Berserker spell builds now. That's what they're trying to put here, and then they're making the faster leech rate more easily, but with an associated risk. I have to look at that. Immortal Ambition's Keystone. Immortal Ambition Keystone's Life Leech effects recover energy shield instead while on full life. That is now limited by maximum total energy shield recovery from Leech instead of maximum total life recovery from Leech. Combined with the Corrupted Soul Keystone and the powerful recovery source of Life Leech, provide two great increase to characters' combined recovery. This change preserves the desirable life effects not being removed at full life, like Leech effects not being removed at full life, aspect of the Keystone, but limits how easy it is to recover your energy shield pool. That's fair. I don't know anybody who is really using... Well, I guess the Keystone itself, but nobody's using the belt for the ES. So Soul Tethers should be pretty unchanged by this. Corrupted Soul Keystone now causes you to gain 15% of maximum life as ES from 20%. The Keystone allowed life-based characters to get large amounts of energy shield very easily. Yep, sure did. While the non-chaos damage taken bypass energy shield stat didn't prove to be a significant downside for most builds taking the Keystone. Also true. Okay. As mentioned above, the Chainbreaker Keystone no longer causes you to lose 5 rage when you hit an enemy, but now instead has skills cost plus 3 rage. The Keystone allowed certain skills either didn't hit, such as Bane, or skills that didn't count as used, such as Totems and Mines, to completely bypass the downside. So nerf to Chainbreaker Totem builds and Mine builds and Trap builds. It's not mentioned here, but Hardened Scars no longer grants Fortify during the effect of any life flask. Instead, now grants Fortify while recovering life from a life flask. It was so niche, though. The notable is granting Fortify too easily to any character that can maintain uptime of a hollowed hybrid flask with the enduring prefix. I never got to try it out. I don't like that. Like, that was a really cool way to put Fortify on a ranger bow character. Because the hollowed flasks are, like, a lot more charge intensive, too. I don't like that. I don't like this. I don't know who, like, how many people were actually using that because this node isn't even visible on the tree. Oh, okay. The Necromancer's Essence Glutton notable. That's had the amount of mana regenerated when you consume a corpse lowered from 8% to 4%. It was providing more base mana regeneration than any other source. Okay. Primal Aegis from the Elemental Bastion of Elements skill now takes 75 damage per allocated notable. Skill from 100. Aegis effect went out too strong in the Elementalist rework. Alright. Everything seems fairly fair, in my opinion. No mentions of Caustic Arrow or Raider Speed being nerfed. Interested in the Vol skill reworks. Really hopeful for the Atlas passives having more balance. The Blade Storm bleed and blood stance I'm a big fan of. And yeah, like I'm a big fan of the increased physical damage on the tree. I hope they successfully balance that around not having the bleed mod, because it's gonna be kind of shocking, I think, having that much bleed damage removed from a lot of people who like starting bleed bow builds or other types of bleed builds. Like, I'd really consider, once we have passive tree information and patch notes, because yikes. Yeah. I bet this poison and bleeds, the new mod for damage over time multiplier, is going to be a prefix still. So, like, you'll get a little bit back, but still, just oof. And it appears this is an Elder mod. Yep, this is an Elder mod. This is not a crafted mod like the Veiled Chaos dot Fire dot Cold dot. So that's specific to Elder weapons still. I mean, it'll probably scale, so you can probably make a usable weapon earlier on. But yeah, I'd say everything looks fairly reasonable in here. I thought this was a very unique mechanic. Like, what reason is there to use a hybrid flask? Other than, this was a cool mechanic that they just neutered. Yeah. Maybe it could make during the effect of any life flask. Now, while recovering life from a life flask. And yeah. Chainbreaker, big nerfs to Totems, Mines, Traps. But overall, made the skill better. Big fan. Alright, that's gonna do it for me. Hope you enjoyed my perspective on these changes, and can't wait for Ultimatum. We're getting close. Like, subscribe. Thanks for watching.